Miller's in the meeting.
Randall's in the meeting.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Thumbs up? Great, thank you very much. It's 5:30, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome to our December 14th, 2020 regular city council meeting for the city of the Dalles. And I would like to, at this point, ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Darcy Long Curtis.
Present.
Linda Miller.
Present.
Tim McLaughlin.
Present.
Rod Runyon. I see him. Scott Randall.
Scott's here. He might be muted. Are you muted, Scott?
Is he 3195?
I believe he is. I thought he was here earlier. Scott, are you there?
Mayor Mays,
Yes,
you're
present.
here. Thank you.
Yeah, that 3165 number is Scott's home number, so I'm sure he's on the line. We just can't hear him for some reason. Well, we'll go ahead and proceed. I'm going to go ahead and lead everyone in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. There's a flag in the conference room there by our city manager. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4 on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I ever hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Miller moves to approve the agenda as presented.
McLaughlin seconds.
It's been
Mayor
moved by.
Mays, your
I'm
agenda
sorry?
has been amended. You have a supplemental agenda.
That's right. I forget. I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
And McLaughlin then seconds.
It's been moved by Councilor Miller and seconded by Councilor McLaughlin to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Okay, I see 4. I trust Councilor Randall is still having a problem getting in. Okay, item 5A is presentations and proclamations. 5A is a fiscal year city audit presentation by Marina and Company. Julie, would you like to introduce our auditors?
That was removed from the agenda in the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Is that going to be rescheduled for next meeting?
January, I believe it's the second meeting in January that we put it on. Is that correct,
Okay, thank
Angie?
It's actually January the 11th.
11th, thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Okay, next is the presentation from the Columbia Gorge Community College. Dr. Marta Cronin will give us an update on the Treaty Oaks facility update. And I believe the city council packet has a nice presentation and a handout for the city council. So with that, I'll introduce Dr. Cronin.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen to show you the presentation for those of you who don't have it in front of you. So just so that you know, it is no longer called the Treaty Oak Skills Center. Our board wanted to make it a more inclusive name, so we have not determined what the name will be yet, but right now we're just calling it the Columbia Gorge Regional Skills Center. So, and as many of you know, we're also building a residential hall at the same time. And groundbreaking was in July of 2020, and they're expecting substantial completion by next July of 2021 for an opening in the fall term. Of course, it'll all depend on where we are with this COVID situation we find ourselves in. So now it looks like my presentation is stuck. Hang on one second. Oh, here we go. All right, so I want to take a moment to recognize our community partners: Wasco County, City of the Dalles, Port of the Dalles, North Wasco County School District, and Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue District. Now, a while back, we presented here and let you know who our team was, who we had hired to work on the project with us. So we're working with Plan B Consultancy. They're our project manager. Opsis LLC is our architect, and Bremick Construction is doing the construction on campus now. We've also been working with Tennyson Engineering. So we also have state and regional partners. The Oregon Legislature is where we got the initial funding for this, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, and Mid-Columbia Economic Development District. So for those of you who haven't seen what the residential hall will look like, this is what it will look like from the outside. And it'll be 2 floors. So we're counting 50 beds divided up between 2 floors. The original project was a little larger, but we had to scale back and do some value engineering. So you have basically, at the end of the hall, you have a suite for the resident advisor, the person who's going to supervise the students. You have a common area for students, and then you have quads. Now in each room, here's a picture of the lobby and the ground floor and the common area where students can gather to study. And student lounge. Now in each of the rooms, you have 4 people in each of the rooms. And I'll show you what that looks like now, in case you haven't seen it. Each room has a little kitchenette, and this is the door to the bathroom. And they have a little study area where they can gather, and these are the 2 bedrooms here to the right side. And each bedroom has 2 beds in it. As the way we're planning it right now, of course, if we open in a situation where we have to reduce occupancy, then it will be 1 per room, depending on where our situation is at that time. So these are just some artist renderings on what we anticipate it will look like. So this is the Skill Center from the outside. This will not say Treaty Oak Skill Center. It'll say whatever we end up calling the center. But this is the outside of the building. Now, for those of you who've been on campus, the entrance to this building is just past where the wind blade used to be. When you came around the top and you made a right, there used to be a big wind blade there from our wind tech program. That is where this building will be housed. And then the housing will be just down the slope. So this is what the Skill Center looks like. The Skill Center will house 2 major programs. The Construction Technology Program, which will be in here, in the middle here in the green. And then in the blue, it'll be the metals fabrication, which is an enhanced welding program. And then on this side, we'll have classroom spaces and faculty offices. And then down here on the right in the green will be like an open lab, which we're going to create a design lab. And all these spaces will be flexible, that can be changed as the needs of the industries change in our area. So they're meant to be a place where we can take equipment in and out. And most of the equipment, other than the welding lab where the welding stations will be stationary, everything else will be movable equipment. So when you come into the building, you'll see a big donor wall that we'll have here to the right. And then there'll be a big open space. And then these are the classrooms that we were looking at before. And then this is what the biggest classroom looks like. It can be divided into 2 classrooms, or it can be opened up and it can be used for community meetings. And it'll be the largest space in the building. And this is when you came into the lobby, you're facing out towards the entrance. This is where you came in through the door here, back here. And then this is where the donor wall was, right here on the left. So this is just a different view of the same thing. And then right here where the green is, that's the wall of one of the classrooms. There'll be a display case where you can look right into the classrooms and see what is going on in there. So this is that flex space that we're using for an open lab. We're going to be doing different things in there, 3D printing. It'll be, again, something that we can change as the needs change. So originally there were 3 programs in to be created in conjunction with the building. The third was aviation, an aviation technology program, aviation maintenance. But there's no space in the building to house the planes and the things that we need for that. So that will be an off-site program. It will still be starting with these new programs in the fall, but it won't be in the building. And so this is the welding lab or the metals fabrication lab. And these are the state where the welding stations are going to be. And that's, again, the one piece of equipment really that is going to be the most stationary in the building. So if ever we had to change this lab out, it would be a little more difficult than all the other spaces. Here's a picture of the construction technology lab. In the design lab, this can be used for CAD design or anything else that's related to the programs. So I wanted to kind of, if you haven't had an opportunity to drive across the campus or come anywhere near it, I wanted to just take a minute and a half of your time and show you just what goes on in a week on campus. See if you can see this little video, you should be able to. So that is a progress in less than 2 weeks. So now they're putting the second floor on the housing building. So anyone who wants a tour, Julie Kruger was recently there on a tour. Anyone who would like a tour, just reach out to me or Dan Spots. I'm just trying to get out of this slide here. There we go. So again, we want to extend our appreciation. The North Wasco School District, City of the Dalles, you've all been very supportive. Wasco County, Port of the Dalles. They've all made this possible. You've all made this possible. So we're really excited, and it's just, anyone you talk to on campus, it's just, there's a lot of excitement. So I hope that you can find the time to come and have a tour, and we're really appreciative of our industry and our community partners. These are the things that make things possible here. So do you have any specific questions? If you want to watch our progress, we do have a YouTube channel. CGCC has a YouTube channel in general, but we have a channel specifically on there where you can check out the construction cam. And in your packet, you should be able to click on that link, or if you just go to YouTube and put Columbia Gorge Community College, it'll be one of the first things that comes up on our YouTube channel.
Thank you, Dr. Cronin.
My pleasure, thank you.
I know that your colleague, Dan Spots, is also with us. Dan, I know you've been very instrumental in getting this project going. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Mayor, no. Dr. Cronin covered it all. We just emphasize our appreciation to the city, the county, the port, and others for making it possible. It is on track, and these are exciting times on the campus. So thank you.
So Dan has been a tireless champion. So thank you for mentioning that. I didn't see him here. He did tell me he was going to be here tonight, but he has been, when I came to interview way back in early 2018, Dan was already talking to me about the building and the construction project, and just the excitement was just, it's contagious, truly.
Well, it doesn't seem like very long ago that we had the social distancing ribbon cutting, and the progress out there has been remarkable. With all this going on between COVID and wildfires, and it's been a tough year, as everybody knows. And I think this has been one of the few bright spots in the whole gorge, is seeing this building transform itself before our eyes. So Nice work, Dr. Cronin and Dan, for a job well done. Is there
Thank
any
you.
council member that has a question or comment? Anybody? I don't see any hands raised, so thank you all very much again. I appreciate your being here and giving us the update.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6 is audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not later appear on the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future agenda for city council consideration. And I can only see 16 screens in front of me, so if you'd like to address the city council at this point, please either raise your hand figuratively or literally, or speak up. Is there anyone that would like to address the city council for up to 5 minutes?
Is this for public input? This is Sharon Ungren. I'm raising my hand.
Yes, it is. Go ahead. You
Okay.
have 5 minutes.
I'm really impressed with the new shelters in place, and I understand the funding from that, for that has some additional funding to possibly place another 5 or 6 in there before the end of the year when that money would have to be returned. Is that the plan, to spend that money on the some remaining shelters in place to add to it?
I believe that's going to be addressed at the it's part of the agenda later, but just to make sure, I'd like to ask the city manager to comment.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. That will be part of the city manager's report, which is the next item on the agenda.
Okay,
Thank you.
right. I'll wait for that then. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? I don't see anybody or hear anybody. Last call. Okay. And with that, we'll turn it over to our city manager, Julie Kruger, for the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. I did submit this report in writing because I have 3 different pieces that I wanted to address with you tonight. The first is the CARES Act grant, and the finance director, Angie Wilson, helped prepare this memo. We worked together on it. It's kind of been a moving project. Every day it seems like there are some other issues that come up. So what we've done is on the CARES Act grant, that's the funding that has to be spent by the end of December or we lose it. We gave you a small recap on what we have already spent. And then the criteria for spending the funds. And then about halfway down the second page of my report, you'll see that I had St. Vincent de Paul was needing some funding for hotel rooms for the homeless. The Windy River Gleaners came forward with a funding request for additional food and canopies to distribute their food weekly. And then we were able to verify kind of at the last minute last week that the funds can be used to reimburse salaries for during the pandemic for first responders, which include our police officers. And then late this afternoon, I had an email saying that Point Man Ministries could also use some funding. They also provide emergency food and I believe it was hotel rooms. So if the council would like to add that in tonight, then we can reduce the amount that the city will use for its own reimbursement. But that way we can go ahead and get these processed so we don't lose the funds, get the money out. So that is my recommendation, $10,000 to St. Vincent de Paul for the hotel rooms, $10,000 to Windy River Gleaners. And then if you want to add in the Point Man Ministries, I believe their request was $5,000 with the remaining, oh, I'm just gonna write that down, 5,000 to be reimbursed for the first responders. So that's our recommendation on that section. If you'd like to discuss that one first, I'm fine with that, or if you'd like, I can go through all three of these sections and then you can have a discussion. What's your preference?
Why don't we take them one at a time? Are you asking for the council's permission to spend that $25,000 for the St. Vincent de Paul, Windy Rivers Gleaners, and the third one for, the Point Man Ministries? Or is
Well,
that just something
What I
you're
would really
advising?
like is, I guess I would just really like a head nod on some of these. They're kind of already in the works. We have the funds. We don't want to lose the funds, so I would just, transparency, I guess, is my reason for bringing it to the council in the form of a report, so everyone has the same information and you know what the requests are and how we were planning to use the funding to finish up that process.
Yeah, according to my, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if there were no objections or no comments from any of the counselors, I would just move forward with that.
I see Counselor Long Curtis, just 1 minute. I want to make sure I understand that if my arithmetic is correct, we have $442,970 authorized. We spent $166,000 already, which leaves around $280,000. And then we take from that, you take the St. Vincent money, the Windy City or the Windy River Gleaners and the Point Man, which is $25,000, which leaves the remainder, which is say $255,000 that would go towards the police department salaries. Am I getting all this right?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead, Counselor Long Curtis.
Yeah, so Julie, I apologize if you responded to me. The internet was not working out at the shelter site today, so I don't know if you did, but my question was, if the funds are restricted and not supposed to be used for anything that we normally budget for, I understand that they can be used for law enforcement, but wouldn't that be being used, or first responders being used for like additional hours and additional services, not the regular services?
We did reply to that, but I'll ask Angie Wilson, our finance director, to reply to that. She did send an email, but Angie?
In speaking with League of Oregon Cities, their response was, it does say, Darcy, you are correct, that we cannot use the grant for anything that we've already currently budgeted for, which personnel services would be something that we already budgeted for. But with the first responders and going on the front lines, they are saying that you can use that money for the first responders, which would be the police officers and the fire department.
But they don't have to do any extra shifts or anything. It just
they've been working extra and being put on the front line and being exposed to COVID on a daily basis. Although they haven't had extra, I'm not exactly sure what extra hours that they have, but they have not noted it towards COVID, but yes, it can be used towards personnel services.
okay. And part of the reason that I'm asking that is these were funds that I had been hoping that we could do more shelters, because that's a problem. And when I was on the call today for the Emergency Solutions Grant for our regional collaboration, we were talking about the shortages and how many more units we need. And so like the whole thing is we have to do this isolation. We can't do the congregate shelter because of COVID. That's very clearly COVID related. And so I would like to use some of these funds to max out our shelter capacity.
That is addressed in my third recommendation of my report, because I had a telephone meeting with the director of Columbia Community Action Council, and he wants to use some of his funding to purchase 5 additional units. So that's in my third recommendation.
But that's not maxing out the shelter amount. He only had money for 5, so I get you're agreeing to let him do that. And I still have to have approval from council to even put them up. But there's room out there for more. It was laid out that way. Everything is there. The electricity is there. the toilets are there, and we have a lot of people who are outside. And if we don't, we didn't go over the attorney's memo, but if we don't provide a place, they can camp in public.
So that is a conversation I would like the city council to have. I can certainly amend this if the council wants to add more than the 5 units that I'm recommending later in my report, to take some of those funds out for that. It absolutely qualifies. It's just a matter of, what does the city council want to do with that site? It's going to be there till March, and I guess I could go ahead and skip to that request where Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, sorry. I always used to call it CAP, so I have to correct myself all the time. They would purchase the 5 units, and they're getting funding to provide 2 full-time staffers out there. So anything beyond that, if the city council wants to expand it further, that's a discussion we need to hear from you tonight. And if the city council wants more than 5 more units out there, and you tell me that tonight, then I can adjust this first piece that was the COVID grant, and we can use some of those funds for additional shelters. I just need to hear from you how many more you would want.
So it would be a reconsideration.
It's my understanding that St. Vincent de Paul is also going to be purchasing 1 additional in addition to the 5, so that would make it 6.
You mean-
That's actually St. Paul's Episcopal.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, St. Paul Episcopal Church.
Thank you. I was not aware of that.
Which would make 6.
So that would be 6. So then you'd have a total of 12. And they would all, with the exception of the one you just spoke about, the other ones would all be owned by Community Action Council. So at the end of the season, they go to them and they will store them.
Correct. And so same thing with the original 6. I had an agreement with Kenny because we changed directors, and he asked me if MCAC could own them at the end of the season, and I agreed to that because I knew that the city didn't want to be responsible for them, and he has another use he can put them to.
When you mentioned Kenny, you're talking about Kenny LaPointe, the executive director of
Yes.
Mid-Columbia Action.
Community Action Council.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess there's 2 questions before the city council. One is, do we want to approve or authorize the addition of 6 new pallet shelters on the city-owned site? Or Councilor Long Curtis, how many additional from that? Did you say 12?
Well, I would want, if we're talking about only funding, I need $45,000 for 6. And that maxes out our site because there's 5 potentially from MCAC and 1 from St. Paul's. And we laid it out so that it was 3 rows of 6.
So you're asking for an additional 6 in addition to the, okay, we got 6 now. We've got St. Paul Episcopal had 1. Mid-Columbia Community Action has 5, so that makes a total of 12. And you're asking for 6 additional from that, which would make it 18. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, because the waiting
Okay.
list is very long.
I see our
Dave
Public
is
Works
saying
Director.
something.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Dave Anderson, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hate to be the monkey wrench in the works, but we did run in power beyond what was needed, a larger service than the original 6, and we put in enough power to be able to take us up to about 13. We thought we were going to be at 15 with that power service, but when the shelters showed up, they actually required a little more power for each one than we originally understood to be the case. So we can actually handle about 13 total. The camp trailer is currently taking up 1 of those. So without some additional, I just want to put a caveat in there. Without some additional information from somebody more knowledgeable than me, like an electrician, I believe we might only be able to accommodate on the power supply side, another 6 shelters beyond what's there.
What would it take to increase the power capacity so that you can accommodate more shelters?
I believe that would be another service drop and or replacing the size of the main panel that's on the existing service drop. One of those two things.
And how long would that take and how much would it cost? You
I
know?
think we were around, I don't have those, I apologize, I don't have those numbers. I think we were around $5,000 to put in the service that's there. That 400 amp service. So we'd be looking at that again.
I think it was a little bit more than that. I think it was a little over $6,000.
Okay.
And then a few things that we learned through the first time is we need to get the electrical permit. We would need to amend our site plan, which we're prepared to do, and resubmit it to the Building Codes Division for approval. So there's a few steps. I think we got the cart before the horse just a little bit, but we were so desperate to get people out of the rain and the cold weather. So now we know exactly what we would need to do. So if the council does approve additional, then we would probably also reduce that bottom dollar for the police by another $5,000 to $6,000 to drop that electrical. And I would also just note that the work that the PUD did on the beginning side of that was all donated. So the money we paid was just for the electrical contract.
And in light of that, I do have some access to additional funds that we could potentially use for that kind of thing. So we did not have to reduce the amount to first responders.
Okay. So is the recommendation of the city manager to authorize 6 additional shelters?
Well, I'm certainly comfortable with that. That's a discussion for the city council. You have the final decision on that one.
Okay, any other member of the city council got any questions or comments? Councilor Runyon.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm still not clear on, is it the money from the city's CARES money, or is it the money from Mid-Columbia Community Action Council? Which is it that would be adding to answer Darcy's question?
It would be a combination. The Mid-Columbia Community Action Council is funding 5 of those. Sounded like St. Paul's Episcopal Church was purchasing 1, and then the remaining 6 would come from the CARES funding in the amount of $45,000, Councilor Long Curtis said.
Is that right? Darcy, is that the total?
Yeah, and then with what Dave just told me about the electrical, because it was different than I originally talked to him about. So, but like I said, there are additional funds, so I'm not asking the city council for that. I can source that from a different place.
At this point, we still don't have a agency on file to actually take over the project. So it's still under our city manager.
No, actually, the YWCA of Greater Portland became the fiscal sponsor. And that was because Mid-Columbia Community Action Council was not in a position to do that, which would normally be the way it should go. And so the plan at this point is that MCAC, I'm just going to call it that, Community Action, is if they use, for the ones they use their money for, they're going to own that. So at this point, if the city wanted to purchase 6 more with that money, you could just say that they belong to MCAC, or you can give them, they can be under the fiscal sponsor, the YWCA, and then at the end of the project, my plan is to close it and move everything over to MCAC, because it was never my intention to start another organization or be running a program all by myself. It was just to be able to get this done quickly and efficiently because we were under such a time crunch with the weather. So
I agree with that, Councilor Long Curtis. I think that if the city does purchase the additional 6 with our COVID funding, that we should say that those would go into ownership of MCAC. I think they're best poised to run a program in the future for us.
So the decision before the city council is, number one, where you're asking for the council to approve the placement of 6 additional shelters at no cost to the city, which would be funded by Mid-Columbia Community Action and St. Paul Episcopal Church. And then the second step would be to approve the purchase of 6 additional shelters beyond that 12 to make a total of 18 for a cost, as I understand, to be $50,000, which would fund $45,000 for 6 additional shelters plus $5,000 for the electrical. Does that summarize?
That would be the maximum. Councilor Long Curtis mentioned she may have another funding source for the electrical. So 50,000 would probably be the very maximum from the COVID funds.
Okay. Can we, if the council wanted to approve the additional 6 above the 12, then that would just take a simple motion of the city council. So
yeah, I actually don't think I need a motion, Mr. Mayor. What I would really like is concurrence, because I know we started out small with just the 6. We know there's more capacity. So it's really just an issue of, are you comfortable if we have 18 units on that site?
okay, but the idea would be that if we went to 18, we would do that even if we didn't have the electrical set up right now. Because as I understand our public works director, it might take some time to get the electrical set up for the 18, for 13 through 18. Right?
Yes, that is correct. And we want to make sure we do it correctly this time. So the first thing we would do after tonight is amend our original site plan, get it to building codes, and then work on the electrical permits. So we have to comply with all those things first.
Yeah, and we would just set delivery date for after that.
I see. Okay.
Last time we were tied to Hood River, that was the problem, but this time we can have it whenever we want.
Okay. Any other city councilor questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor,
just want to clarify that this is the maximum that can go on this piece of property, number one. There are some differences to the Hood River project from what I'm understanding. So Councilor Long Curtis, I'd like you to explain that a little bit. The one that I've seen is that with Hood River's project, they do not hold the room for folks. They leave each day unless that's changed. And in this particular setting in the Dalles, we allow them to leave their belongings and retain it. But if they are not there for 2 days, then you can clean it out, I guess. Is that correct? And the reason for the difference, I guess, to the public.
Sure. So the reason for the difference is that the church, which is the location in Hood River, did not, they use their church during the day and they didn't want to have the people from the shelter on during the daytime hours. And so everybody has to leave. And so they have a special thing with their bus system that does a loop 3 times in the morning and 3 times at night to take people downtown or back up to the church. And so that's the primary reason, is just that they weren't allowed to be in there.
Okay. Then my final question is, I've heard end of project named several times, and originally we talked about this project going through the end of March, and my last conversation with the city manager was that is still the plan, and is that the plan we're talking about here now?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And there's 2 full-time staff people that we can hire if we do this, if we expand. So it's not like I'm just going to be by myself trying to do this. And I have volunteers too.
Which brings up another question, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
I just love to ask questions, you know that. But the idea is to get it out to the public so that these things get answered. staff people employed by who?
YWCA of Greater Portland.
And so
We
we're
would do
all,
local hiring, but they are technically employees of the YWCA. And the money would be coming from community action here, going straight to them. And then they have to report back all of the stuff that has to be reported for those kind of funds, which have pretty strict requirements.
okay, because the main question I've been getting is, are these going to be city employees and sustainability and benefits and all the rest of it, but they are not going to be city employees.
No, the YWCA of Greater Portland is a very large organization. It handles a lot of federal funds, and that puts them like in a special category for their auditing. And they do this for a lot of small projects so that the projects don't have to become a 501c3 themselves, but then they have to be accountable to the YWCA and meet all the requirements. And then they use their 501c3 for that. And in this case, for hiring employees and all of the employment law and the paychecks and everything.
Thank you.
Counselor McLaughlin?
I just want clarification why WCA is related to YMCA. Is it an affiliate?
Well, it's the women's side of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what the acronym stands for.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, in a nutshell, the city manager is asking for city council blessing or consensus to allow the placement of 12 additional pallet shelters on the city site and authorize the purchase of those additional 12, 6 paid for by the city, and also the connecting electrical service, related electrical service, I should say, not to exceed $50,000. Does that pretty well summarize it? Julie?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay. I don't think I'd feel uncomfortable if somebody wanted to make a motion, or everybody could just give a thumbs up or any other comments, so we can get this resolved.
I'm still hesitant on the 6. Yes, I agree with that, but the other 6 with city, there's still unanswered questions about cost and where the funds are going to be, and especially if it pulls funds from first responders. I have concerns with that. So I would say 6, I support. The other additional 6 by city, I still have unanswered questions there. So I wouldn't be in favor of approving that.
Is it true that the $50,000 would come out of, it's not going to come out of first responders? It's not like they're not going to be paid, is it? It's just
No, we would just take the remainder of the balance from that CARES Act grant and apply that to the first responders, regardless of the amount.
So when I was doing the arithmetic and I suggested that say 250 to 255,000 would be dedicated toward those first responder salaries, if we were to take $50,000 out of city funds to fund the shelters, that would leave, say, $200,000 to be allocated toward the first responders. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
I mean,
correct.
give or take a few $1,000s. Okay. Does that change your mind, Councilor McLaughlin, or do you still have concerns?
Well, an additional concern is when you compress that many people, which would be 36, into a small confined area. I don't know, I have concerns. What is the capacity of that property? Have we talked to the health department to get their input as far as spreading COVID with too close a proximity? Those are some of the questions that make me hesitant to go 6, yes, 12, okay, 18. That's starting to get to the threshold for me. I don't know about anyone else if you have any concerns with that, but you know, we are responsible for making a safe environment so it would not spread COVID to the occupants of this shelter.
Correct.
That's my concern.
May I answer? Mr.
Counselor Long Curtis, go ahead.
So that is something that we talk about on the Unhoused Oregon Response and Recovery Network. And that's a group of shelter providers throughout the state, and also the state level employees who do the epidemiology and all of everything that would have to do with running a shelter safely. And I also have a primary contact at the local public health department who can answer any questions that I have, and they have been helping me with some of those things. Plus we had behavior, Bridges to Health, there we go, come out and do a safety talk with all of the residents about mask wearing and hand sanitizer and all of that stuff. There's no concern because all of the shelters are more than 6 feet apart, and they're primarily, the primary concern is the two people in the shelter together. So we encourage them to sleep head to foot. Still, it's only 8 feet different. But I haven't forced anybody to be together who wasn't already hanging out. I guess it's a close-knit community, and so people are choosing that. No one's being put at risk. I mean, it's a lot of other communities have much larger programs than what we have.
Is there,
There's no
with
communal
the,
eating or anything because we don't have anything except the shelters and toilets.
speaking of toilets, are there going to be additional porta potties out there with the additional pallet shelters if they're approved?
I don't think that they would be necessary. And even if they did, I'm not asking the city for that money. What we're asking for tonight is all I'm asking from the city. I have additional funds. Google gave some funds and some other people, and all of that stuff is going straight to the YWCA, and then we can use it from there. But yeah, this 50,000 is all I'm asking from the city.
Any other questions or comments?
One other one, please, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Runyon.
You and Counselor Long Curtis keep using city, but it's reimbursable city money from the COVID funds, correct? I just don't want to get the wrong idea going out there. It's not our general fund money being used for this, except in a reimbursable situation.
So
Second.
yeah, it's the COVID money that came in that we wouldn't have otherwise had. It's not money out of our regular budget.
Right. I know that, but we do have the press listening. I just want to make sure we're saying the right things here. So I'm not.
No, clarification is important. That's fine.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. It's not general fund. It's money that we were given through the federal government.
Yeah. One other thing that just kind of came to me here. I was trying, and I may have lost it now, but
while you're thinking of that,
I know what it was. It was with the city manager. It's been expressed to me several times, and I think here tonight, that the city manager has authority to expend funds without voting and whatnot. I really appreciate the fact that we're involved in the discussion and whatnot, so she has some ideas about what we are thinking, but apparently we're not really necessary to the approval of it. However, I just want to say this is it for me. Once we've expanded this property to the max or whatever, I have no interest in going any further with this. I'm seeing more and more people. I've been around this community a long time, and I know the faces of most of the regulars, and all of a sudden we're having more and more people in the community that all of a sudden desire our services, and that's all well and good. But the more we do, the more will come. And so this is it for me. I won't be approving any further projects, whether they need our vote or not.
So just to clarify, Councilor Runyon, you're okay with the 18 shelters, and that's it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's fine, but no more. That's it.
Okay. Councilor Randall or Miller, do you want to any comments from you?
Miller is fine with 6 more, but not a total of 18. And I have heard derogatory comments regarding the encampment from neighbors out there in that vicinity.
Council Randall.
Yeah, I agree. I think 18 is probably about as many as I would be comfortable with. But it sounds like it's been planned for, as Councilor Curtis said, 3 rows of 6. So it's been anticipated, but I think that's probably about the max I'm willing to go with.
How close to the Northwest Natural Gas fence would that make 3 rows of 6?
Dave, what did we decide? It was going to be far enough away that they didn't want that. Was it like 10 feet?
That was my original understanding. I thought I had heard that there were subsequent discussions that they wanted more distance than that from the fence, but I didn't hear that personally. We could follow up on that.
Yeah, we can. I talked to Tanya Brumley today, who's been kind of the point lead on that. And she's really pleased with how everything is going. In fact, she brought Christmas presents for all of the residents out there. So we could double check with her, but she's not indicating any problems at this point. She's real pleased with it.
So that right now there's 6 shelters that are lined up north and south perpendicular to the river. I was assuming that the other 6 or other 12 would be to the east. So would there be a row to the west also, or?
Both rows would be to the west.
Okay.
Because, yeah, where the barriers are to the east, that is kind of the property line. And that's also so that Northwest Natural can get their trucks in there. And they have big trucks that have to go into their yard.
Currently,
Okay, so if you put the shelters to the east of the existing shelters, it would interfere with Northwest Natural's ability to get in and out. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It seemed to me there'd be a lot more room over there, but that answers that. Okay.
Yeah, and the
Thank
rest of it on the other side of the pole is cherry growers or Saddlemans, whatever it is. So that's not ours.
Okay. Okay. Any other counselor have a comment or question? Okay. City Manager Kruger, I'm hearing, if I'm not mistaken, I'm hearing 2 members of the council. Well, actually, I hear 3 members of the council prefer the expanding 18. I hear 2 giving the opinion that we should limit it to 6.
no, to 12.
Well,
Well, I mean, a 6 additional.
Yeah, I
I
know.
hear Councilor McLaughlin and Miller would like to keep the additional shelters to 6, whereas Runyon and Randall and Long Curtis are okay with expanding from 6 to 18. And Council Randall and Runyon are making it clear that they will never approve anything more than the 18. Am I hearing everything correctly? Am I summarizing that correctly? I'm asking the city council. Okay.
yes.
I have a question for Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
So you put up the security cameras for us. Have you seen any problems on there?
I've seen vehicles that have driven into that section create a problem with people if they want to go out. So those would have to be eliminated and they would have to be parked somewhere else. I'm seeing quite a bit of movement late at night between hours of 12 to, because I get notifications. So I don't know who's coming and going, but we want to keep that down to a minimum for security reasons. We don't want people coming and going. Other than that, I've seen no overt issues with the site. And I do have capability of going back and reviewing footage. So, that's my report on that.
And no police calls out there either.
Not that I'm aware of. I think I just need to come back with Dave Anderson and you have confidence that putting an additional 12 units on that property, because it's a compressed small area, that it would still, well, the electricity, we would be able to get additional electrical drops. And would it create any other kind of issues putting that high of concentrations on such a small piece of property. If you tell me you're okay with that,
I think the electrical portion can be addressed. I didn't know that we were talking about this many use, so I didn't come tonight with answers to that, but I certainly know where to get those answers. And we can get those answers pretty quickly, say before 6 shelters were ordered that we wouldn't be able to use. So I think we can answer that pretty quickly. And it sounds like Councilor Long Curtis has already had some conversation with Northwest Natural Gas, because that would be the other concern that, based on the earliest conversations I was involved with, how close we get to that fence was an issue for them. And it sounds like those conversations have happened. So I'm not seeing a fatal flaw with the information I have available to me right now.
I would have preferred like a schematic with a layout, but with your recommendation, I think that I can reconsider. I just want to make sure that funding doesn't come from other departments or other, like first responders, or they suffer because we've expanded it. So I just want some assurances that that won't happen. Does that make sense? So I want to make sure we have capacity. Number 2, we want to have safety and a plan in place. And then it does matter that the Councilwoman Miller, do you have any additional people in the area that you've spoken to that have concerns with expanding? I've not
Yes.
heard it. Okay.
A restaurant at the other end of Bargeway.
All right. Any other additional?
And I want to respond to that because it was posted online and I Googled it. It's 0.4 miles to that restaurant and it's a 7-minute walk, and people go to the bathroom in the porta potties. In fact, some of the homeless people come and use the porta potties so they don't go somewhere else. So I don't believe it was someone living in my unit that would walk all the way down there and go to the bathroom. It's one of the people who isn't currently in the units. And if we could get them in there, then they would not be toileting at that restaurant anymore.
Except it didn't happen until those shelters were in place and being used.
No, they told me a long time ago that right over the fence there, they had an encampment. They had to clean it up all the time. So I still don't think people are going to, why would they walk that far to go to the bathroom when there's one a few steps away?
Dave Anderson, am I to understand that there might be, albeit a slight possibility, that we're not going to have enough electrical capacity to serve 18 shelters?
I know that we're going to have to run in an additional power service or increase the size of the service that we have. I
Okay.
know we don't have enough capacity with what was constructed to serve 18.
Okay, then I'll come back and ask, the additional funds, does that come out of the COVID grant or does that come out of another source? That's a question for Julie.
Councilor Curtis already spoke to that issue, saying that she has other funds donated that she can use to pay for the additional electric service.
And those funds are located where, with what agency?
YWCA.
So they will, and they have agreed in order to do this.
They are the fiscal agent. So Councilor Curtis has received these donations, and the donations have gone to the YWCA, and they'll remain in a fund until needed. So if Councilor Curtis goes to them and says, I need $5,000 to pay for additional electric, then they write a check to her from those funds. So they're separate from the COVID grant funds of the city.
One last question. Do we know that we have sufficient funds in that YWCA to cover the cost of the electricity and any other things that we may not predict, but that comes about?
Well, I already said that I wouldn't ask for any more from the city except that 50,000, that's the max.
Councilor McLaughlin, do you, are you still want the 6, or are you willing to go up to the 12 additional?
I'm okay with 6.
Okay.
I just,
I'm sure Go ahead.
I'm still looking at, are there other hidden costs that we aren't covering here tonight and making commitments? What if we cannot expand? What do we do? Do we move it back to 12 and we allow 12? Is that the assumption?
I'm gathering that the assumption is that we can fit 18. Is that a correct assumption? Councilor Long Curtis or city manager?
Well, I guess how I would say it is that this is like a standalone program. It wasn't something that the city council wanted to do. And so I needed authorization for the place. And obviously, if I didn't have money to do the electrical, we wouldn't put electricity in, and then we wouldn't be able to have units. I mean, that's just part of my project. And like anybody else who would come, you think, or whoever coming to ask for money, I mean, the city is not on the hook to make up any difference from me. They're just a piece of the funding for this. So all I'm saying is $50,000 for those two very specific things, maximum, no more than that. I'm not asking for anything else. I'm not asking to be able to flex the funds to something else, just that plus the permission to put them up.
Julie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you entertain a question from Councilor-elect Dan Richardson?
Oh, sure. I didn't see his hand. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may have missed this, but can anyone confirm that Community Action Council is willing to take the possession of the units of the CARES Act funded units under discussion? Has that been confirmed, or is that just sort of a working assumption?
I would need to defer that to Councilor Long Curtis.
Oh, I thought that when you and Kenny Lapointe met, that he confirmed that to you. So
he confirmed that he would purchase the 5 and he would own those. Beyond that, I haven't had a conversation with him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I have an email where he asked me if he could have the original 6, and I agreed to that. I mean, I could show you if you want. I mean, at this point, I'm not going to own anything, thank God, at the end of this.
I don't think anybody. I don't think anybody is suggesting that Mid-Columbia Community Action would not own the additional 6. I think Dan's question relates to the additional 6. Who would own the additional 6? That would go from 12 to 18. Is that right, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That could be however Julie wants to set it up. Doesn't matter to me. But before, the city didn't want to own. That's why the original 6, they were happy to give them to MCAC, because the city didn't want to own them. But
if I may, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. If I may, I'll add that to my list of notes for tomorrow morning, and I will check in with Community Action Council and verify whether or not they would be willing to take ownership. And if they say no, for some reason, I don't think they would say no, but if they do say no, then I think we don't want to own them, so maybe we wouldn't purchase them. So I would verify Northwest Natural is okay with the plan to fit 18 on that lot and the space between their property and ours. We would verify whether or not the electric can be dropped for those additional units and whether Community Action Council would take ownership of all of them.
so even if Community Action Council wouldn't take ownership of the final 6, which I don't believe will happen, but my fiscal sponsor, the YWCA, you would send the money through them, they would purchase them, then they would own them in that case. And I know that they will do something with them, because those shelters are being used all over the state now that I started it, and they're even using it for people who were burned out of their wildfire homes. So there's a big demand for those.
I've had a couple discussions with Mr. Lapointe. I'd be surprised if they didn't agree to take ownership of the additional 6. Councilor McLaughlin?
Okay, one final question from me. If someone were injured, who would be responsible for liability on this property?
The city has a liability on that property.
if something should be because of residency or because of COVID, or someone was injured as a result of one of the buildings, I don't know, having a problem, who would be responsible for that? It would still be the city. Wouldn't it be the owners of the buildings?
Well, if it was on the city's property, that's what we have the liability insurance coverage for. Daniel, I see you're here, so if I'm saying anything incorrect, let me know. But we did take liability insurance on the property for this.
All right. That answers that. All right.
Counselor Runyon.
Yeah, and you kind of beat me to it, but there's another piece of it that Councilor McLaughlin didn't really ask. And that has to do with another agency being involved, like this YWCA. Julie, does the city require, paperwork from the YWCA as to their liability insurance and so forth to be a part of this project on city land?
No, we have not done that. Our insurance is only on the property, I believe. Is that correct, Daniel?
That's correct. And the other parties would only need to be insured if they had operations on the property that we would otherwise be liable for if they did not have insurance.
Now, who responded by saying that? I can't see.
That was our Human Resources Director, Daniel Hunter, who also works on our insurance coverages.
Well, you just made the point of operations on our property, and it sounds like that's what's going to happen if they have employees, et cetera. So it seems like at least we need to investigate that through our attorney, et cetera, if we need to have paperwork provided about their insurance coverage, those other agencies that are involved.
I'm in agreement with with Councilor Runyon on that.
That needs to be checked into anyway.
Thank you.
Just an old retired insurance agent, sorry.
And I'm interested in maintaining the interest of the city. We want to look at all these things so we don't come back and have something happen in the future and regret.
These are all very good questions, and I think this is a lot of responsibility for us, for the city, and I'm glad these questions are getting answered or will be answered. And I'm sure the city manager would appreciate a bigger consensus than 3-2. But do you feel you have enough directions, Julie, to proceed from here?
Yeah, I do. It makes me a little uncomfortable as well to have a split like that. But I will first get all these questions answered tomorrow or Wednesday. And then I think if I get all the answers I need to hear, I'll be a lot more comfortable moving forward with it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And of course, you'll send out any reports you deem necessary to the city council, to me, with any follow-up that you've been, looks like you got some follow-up to do.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other last comments or suggestions or questions before we move on?
If you, Mr. Mayor, if it's appropriate, I have just one brief one.
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask, and probably Councilor Long Curtis would be the appropriate person, just to get a sense of the scale of need or demand for the shelters. What kind of wait list might there be?
Enough to fill the ones that I'm asking for, but a couple of those will only be able to have one person in them because of their mental health situation. For example, the one that St. Paul's is paying for, that's for someone that they're trying to help. So there's an application that I put out now, and I've got, the hospital has them and various people around town. And then there's an agreement. I think you guys got that. I think it went out to all the council with the rules and everything. So, but Councilor Runyon brought this up, a good point, that he was concerned about all the new faces that he was seeing that he didn't recognize. It is true that our homeless population has expanded, and there were a lot of faces I didn't know as well. But as I talk to the referring agents, I'm discovering that these are people who are from the Dalles, even long-term residents who have lost their job recently during this COVID time. And so I'm not accepting people who are from out of town at all, because the council was very clear that they didn't want a situation. I didn't want that either. So everybody is either known to me, same as to Paul, the police department, or one of the referring agencies to verify that they are really residents of the Dalles.
Good.
Okay, anybody else? Any last questions or comments? Okay,
Let's
once
roll.
again, I believe the city is, did I hear something?
Let's roll.
Okay. I believe the city manager has direction, and she will continue to communicate with the city council as to where we go from here. Thank you very much. And we're still in the manager's report.
Yeah, I have a couple more things sorry I took up so much of your time tonight, but these were important and urgent issues I needed to have you informed of. And the other one on this list on the report that I sent you was just to give you an update on our city economic recovery grants and start getting those funds out. Again, this is an item that's already been budgeted. I just wanted to let you know basically that we're going to start with $100,000, and I've been working with the Chamber of Commerce, and Lisa Farquharson has been extremely helpful in helping me get that set up so that we can move quickly on that. We'll do the press releases. And when I wrote this report, I had let you know that Wasco County was working on their process. They've since completed that, and they've already rolled out their grant process, which is over $700,000 to businesses in Wasco County. So I think we have some very robust programs that will get money into the hands of the businesses very quickly. So I'm excited to move forward with that. And then just one other very quick thing, the city and Wasco County and the Port of the Dalles have been working with the golf course board of directors, trying to figure out if there's a way to get water from our water distribution system in Cuckwell out by the Discovery Center to the golf course. So I just wanted to give the city council a quick update and let you know that we are all working together on that project, and I hope to bring something back to the city council for consideration the end of January. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions for the city manager before we move on? Thank you. City attorney report, Mr. Kara.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. So I've attended the past 2 airport board meetings with Councilor McLaughlin, and I've been working closely with our airport manager, David Rasmussen, who I believe is on this call, on a few matters impacting the city there. And I look forward to taking a tour of the facility next month. My understanding is that Dan Richardson, as the councilor-elect, is also welcome to join me on this tour, where we can go different times and take a look at the airport and really understand the facilities on a much closer scale, because of how important it is to our community here. I think it's a really good idea. Also, our public works director has been keeping me very busy this winter with a number of different infrastructure and utility improvements. I'm happy to report each of them, and all of them, have improved the quality of life for the city in many countless ways. And finally, I recently prepared a summary of pending or threatened litigation, asserted claims, and assessments for our annual audit, which is going to be on the agenda for the January 11th meeting. And I was hoping to, since I already did the work on compiling that, might as well expand on it just a little bit to give council a litigation update on just our pending cases and just sort of give you a status check on the way those have been progressing in the past, I think, 2 months since I sent my last one. So please be on the lookout for that by the end of the week. And other than that, that's about it for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. City council reports. The first one I see is Councilor Runyon.
Really? Yeah, just a couple of meetings. LIPSC, Local Public Safety Coordinating Council, and they're having some stress about bridges to change, and that funds are becoming thin, and that works in cooperation with the Wasco County Parole and Probation. And if I thought about that one earlier, maybe I should have sent that in as a request as well. But that might be something we look at if there's future funding coming from all of this granting that's out there at present and in the future. The other meeting was Q Life, and I think the Water's Edge project, Councilor Long Curtis can correct me if I'm missing something without going into real detail. I think that's coming along almost to completion at this point. They've got some bugs to work out, but doing well. And they have some other projects around the Mid-Columbia between the county and the city, among others that are starting to go forward. And we'll see how they work into the new year. And maybe we'll have real details here before long. The other meeting, I've been attending by Zoom, of course, the League of Oregon Cities meetings every Friday at 10:05. They're generally a health report down the list around the state. I can't really tell you that they're really beneficial. They're very general and always pushed one direction without a lot of questions that really need to be out there. But I am paying attention to those and also listened at length to the governor's report here this last Friday that followed that League of Oregon Cities meeting. So that's about it for the last 2 weeks.
Thank you, Councilor Runyon. Councilor McLaughlin?
Yes, sir. I attended an airport commission meeting last Friday. I see, let's see, David Rasmussen is also on. So step in if I make an error here, but we heard a request for construction of a new hangar that's in progress, and I don't have the update. David was giving us that information, and he was waiting to have a call back. Correct, David?
Yeah, that's correct. I was a little disappointed. I wasn't able to get the plans and any more information from that gentleman, but I reached out to him again, so I'm hoping to hear back soon.
So we also established representation to the airport budget, and members were confirmed. The management report included a new potential revenue agreement for unused runway and increased sales of aircraft fuel to the military is still on an upward swing, and they're having record sales. General improvement to the ground equipment in preparation for snow so that we can meet the needs of the airport to keep it open during the inclement weather that we assume is on its way. The security cameras are installed and functioning, and we have, I'll wait until management comes on and then do a training and transfer the supervision of the video to whoever's in charge of that. I really do appreciate the efforts by our management team to seek ways to help businesses and individuals hard hit by the pandemic. So I just want to do a shout out to Julie and your crew. Tomorrow I have a urban development at 5:30. And may I ask about Dog River, Dave? How are we doing there and where do we stand? We haven't heard in a while from, and that's an important project that we're undertaking, correct?
That is correct. So we received our final authorization from the Forest Service on September 1st. In the time since then, I've drafted an RFP, a request for proposals to advertise for the contract to design the pipeline. Jonathan mentioned earlier that I've been keeping him busy. That's one of the things that I've sent to him recently. So that RFP is expected to go out later this month. And we will probably be presenting that to the city council at either the very latter part of January or early part of February for award.
Well, can I give a woohoo? All right. That's long waited. Thank you very much. All right, that's my report.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Long Curtis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I mentioned today, I participated in the emergency Resolution Grant Regional Collaborative Meeting. That's being led by Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. And it's a regional effort from Hood River, Sherman County, and Wasco County. And there's going to be a competitive grant process with funds that are to be used to address the needs of people experiencing homelessness and to assist people with gaining stability and permanent housing. So the group is trying to decide how they want to use those funds. Part of the discussion was to start planning now for winter shelter for next year. I think probably when you get your homeless away, Mr. Mayor, I think you might want to appoint someone maybe instead of me to be on that collaborative, someone who knows what the city wants to do next year. On December 11th, I participated in the community outreach team meeting. We gave each other year-end updates on projects we had been working on and that we had taken virtually to Washington, D.C. this year. And then we also thanked Dan Spots for handling the very difficult job of putting together the schedule for the community outreach team for our visits to Washington, D.C. That's a very complicated task, and he did it very well for many years. On the 11th, I also participated in the Unhoused Oregonians Response and Recovery Network. That's a group of shelter providers throughout the state. We share experiences, and then we get advice from state level about COVID. And then at the end, they talk about the wildfires, which don't affect me. And on the 7th of December, I participated in the Food and Shelter Task Force update. There were a lot of questions about our shelters, and they'll be happy to hear the latest news. If anybody hasn't heard, the Oregon Food Bank has closed on a new warehouse. It's the old I3D building. And so they are getting that together. And fortunately for us, we can make the argument that the expanded capacity is because of COVID and the number of people needing more food. And so they're able to use some of those grant dollars in order to renovate the building and purchase the freezers and things that they need in order to get that up and going. So it's pretty exciting, actually. December 3rd was the Q Life meeting. Councilor Runyon did a really great job of going through that. What he was talking about out there at Lone Pine is just that we're finally getting the last of the fibers in. If you don't know, Q Life just is a middle backbone. We don't take things to the house or anything. We don't do the last mile. And so we're getting those fibers in so that the individual internet service providers can attach to them and then start offering service to the residents out there. And the hospital already has its connection, and the kidney place also has their connection. Oh, and just an update, because I think sometimes people wonder why the internet takes so long to get service to a certain place. So we've been waiting for months at Q Life to for another service provider, I won't name them, but they're a big one, to finish connecting their small portion so that we can get high-speed internet out to those new Curtis homes that are out there by Sorosis Park. So that's kind of a frustrating thing that I don't really understand why they're dragging their feet on that. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councilor Randall.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. I have nothing to report.
Councilor Miller. Councilor Miller?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Very well.
Okay.
Yes, we can. Very, very well.
Okay. So on the 9th, I attended the Tri-County Household Hazardous Waste and Recycling Steering Committee meeting. And DEQ was part of that meeting. And the DEQ predicts that some form of extended producer responsibility, their short EPR, legislation pertaining to the modernizing Oregon's recycling system is likely in 2021, stemming from the consensus-driven legislative recommendations put forth by the statewide Recycling Steering Committee. Also, part of that meeting was they're calling it Recycling 101. It's a platform for teaching recycling in the school system, K through 12, specifically honing in on the 6th and 8th grade science, environmental science classes. And that's my report.
Thank you. As far as the mayor's report, since our last council meeting, I've had several, actually more than several meetings regarding the homeless issue here in town, and looking toward the long-term problem solving as far as that issue is concerned. On the 27th, I was a judge at the Starlight Parade, and I know our chamber executive director is present. I'd like to compliment Lisa on the great job that the chamber did with the Starlight Parade. It was a nice thing to have, a nice event considering what's going on. I attended 2 meetings with the aforementioned business recovery issue that Julie reported on. And I also, on December 2nd, sat in on 5 interviews with police chief candidates, which was very interesting. I also attended 2 meetings with the North Central Regional Equity and Recovery Committee through the governor's office. And I also attended the community outreach team meeting that Councilor Lund Curtis already talked about. And this last Saturday, Councilor-elect Dan Richardson and I attended the Portland State University, what they call the boot camp, which is a workshop for city and county officials. There were about 75 others in attendance at this Zoom meeting, and it was very good, very informative, a lot of interesting discussions. And I just like to point out that I don't think there was a city present at the boot camp who was not going through the same thing that we are as far as the homeless is concerned. Finally, I'd like to remind the city council that I sent out an email last week asking you to set up a meeting with me to discuss appointments for next year. And that concludes my report. Okay.
Mayor Mays? Mayor
Yes.
Mays, I'd like to make a comment to Lisa at the chamber. Kudos to you for the gift certificate program that you have. I was in the chamber offices today purchasing. I think it's a wonderful way to help our city businesses here in town and to do a great Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll just give a quick update since I opened up my mic. Sorry. We, as of this morning, had already over $14,000 purchased with those gift cards.
Well, Lisa, you were out of order, but hey, we really appreciate the report anyway. And you want to actually, seriously, you want to tell a little bit about how people, yeah, go ahead. I'd like to know a little more about it myself.
My husband tells me I'm out of order all the time. So for those of you who don't know, it's called Explore the Dalles gift card. It is a gift card that you can purchase at the chamber online or in person or even over the phone for curb pickup. And it will keep every dollar local in our community. So it is one way that you can shop with one gift card. At right now, over 30 businesses are a part of this program. I'm working on the next 10, so hopefully 40 will be soon. And then just know that every dollar spent stays right here in the Dalles, and take that, Amazon. So that is our goal, that we keep the dollars local. We know that most of these will be Christmas gifts, so that the spending isn't going to necessarily happen in December, which is actually, we want that, but we also want knowing that probably most likely January, where it's the deadest time of the year for our businesses, that these people will be out purchasing, and then those monies will go to that business. So we're pretty excited. Just be patient with us because it's brand new in the Northwest. We are the pilot program for these 2 different companies coming together and producing a program like this in the Northwest. So the Dalles is on the map for lots of reasons.
Great. Thank you very much. That's a great idea. And as the mayor, I'd like to encourage everyone to shop locally. Okay, item 10, consent agenda. Items of a routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on the important items and issues. Any councilor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. And if so, they'll be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. There's only one thing on the consent agenda, and that's the approval of the minutes of the November 23rd regular city council meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councilor Long Curtis.
Mr. Mayor, may I interrupt you just for a moment? Sorry about that. The supplemental agenda added approval of a set of minutes from the October 12th meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Okay, we do have approval of the October 12th meeting as well. Councilor Long Curtis, do you still want to make a motion?
Yes, I'll move approval of the consent agenda, including the supplemental agenda, adding the additional minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Miller second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Long Curtis and seconded by Councilor Randall to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Laughlin, aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 11A, which is a supplemental budget resolution. And we are having a legislative hearing on this. And I am hereby opening the legislative hearing. Now is the time for a public hearing regarding the approval of a supplemental budget. This is a legislative hearing to receive testimony regarding the proposed supplemental budget. I will open the public hearing and ask for a staff report, and following the staff report, I will then ask for testimony from the audience. At the conclusion of the testimony, the public hearing will be closed and the matter turned over to the city council for deliberation and hopefully a decision. So with that, I'm opening the public hearing and I would now like to ask for a staff report. I trust that would be our finance director.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. You have before you my agenda staff report for resolution number 20-28. It's a resolution adopting the supplemental budget for the fiscal year of 2020-21, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures from within the airport fund of the City of the Dalles adopted budget. The FAA federal grant and the COAR grant, which is the Critical Oregon Airport grant, were approved in the fiscal year budget 2018-19 or 1920 for the apron project. Due to the project not getting started until July, there is a need to move the grant money over to the 2021 fiscal budget. There was also a new federal COVID grant for $30,000 that I would also like to bring the revenue in for, and $10,892 for an insurance claim for the runway damage to cover the repairs. So this will cover the capital outlay expenses and the material and service expenses that need to happen in this fiscal year.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify regarding this request for a supplemental budget? Anybody? Okay, I do not see any public testimony, nor do I see any hands raised, nor do I hear anyone who would like to testify. So with that, I am closing the public hearing. And I'm now asking for the council to deliberate and hopefully make a decision. Does anyone have any questions of the staff regarding the supplemental budget request? No comments or questions? Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
Mayor Mays, I move to adopt resolution number 20-028, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures from within the airport fund of the City of the Dalles adopted budget.
Miller second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor McLaughlin and seconded by Councilor Miller to approve to adopt the supplemental budget. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
McLaughlin.
Any opposed?
Miller, aye.
None opposed. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 12, this is the Wicks Well Mechanical Maintenance Project. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of council. One of the items included in this year's budget is a maintenance project on the Wicks Well. This well is located upstream of the intake to the Wicks Water Treatment Plant, and its primary use is to activate it in the wintertime during the coldest temperatures, blend with the water in South Fork Mill Creek, and keep the water from freezing in the plant as it's being treated. While we've done periodic inspections and maintenance on the well systems that are above ground, it's been over 50 years since the pump itself and the shaft have been pulled to inspect or do maintenance on any of the below ground equipment. Staff developed a contract for the project that anticipated a couple of different scopes of work. One would be to remove the well equipment, inspect it. If it was determined that it should just be maintained and replaced, that was one scenario. Or if it was determined that it would be more cost effective to replace the equipment, that was a second scenario. The project was put out to bid. We received 4 responses. The low bid was received from Schneider Equipment. In their bid, they provided the lowest cost under any of the scenarios that were anticipated in the contract. And it's estimated that the worst case scenario of replacing all the equipment under the Schneider Equipment bid would be $71,800. This includes about 20 hours of time for inspection services and developing reports. The current budget identifies $85,000 for the project within the water fund. And so we have funds available for the project. And with that, it's staff recommendation that the city council move to authorize the award of contract number 2020-006 for the Wicks Well Maintenance Project to Schneider Equipment in an amount not to exceed $71,800.
Any questions for Mr. Anderson? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Miller moves to authorize the award of contract number 2020-006 for the Wicks Well Maintenance Project to Schneider Equipment in an amount not to exceed $71,800.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Okay.
Was that you, Councilor Randall?
Yeah, let Scott, yeah.
Okay. Was moved by Councilor Miller, seconded by Councilor Randall to approve the contract. Is there any more discussion or any comments or questions?
I just
All those
hope
in
if they
favor-
have to replace it, I hope if they have to replace anything, that it lasts for another 50 years.
Let the record show that Mr. Anderson gave that a thumbs up. I hope that becomes part of it. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 13. An ordinance amending the home inspection requirements for the short-term rentals in the Dalles Municipal Code. I bet this is Ms. Cannon.
Mayor Mays and members of council, good evening. I want to introduce Josh Chandler, who is also part of tonight's presentation. He may be available to answer questions should you have them. Tonight, we're asking consideration of ordinance number 20-1383 to make some amendments to a program that you adopted back in September of 2020 at your September 14th meeting. At that time, the staff proposed and you adopted a new short-term rental inspection or short-term rental license program. And in that program, basically we moved the short-term rental regulations out of the land use code and moved them into the municipal code, thereby creating a more efficient process for our customers and one that's much more robust and modern. So with that, as we went to implement the program following the passage by council in September, we noticed that we needed to make some very practical changes to the home inspection requirement. And so want to give some credit to Josh Chandler, our planner, who identified that the home inspection or the inspection program that we had established was going to be inefficient and clunky for our customers. And so the one that has been recommended in this ordinance is one that came from the city of Bend. And what it does, we worked in partnership with the fire marshal to establish a self-inspection program where applicants will go through their own checklist to identify that they're meeting all the requirements, and then they will they'll sign it, and we'll keep that paperwork for our purposes, for liability purposes, to ensure that the applicant has complied with all the requirements. We think this will be much more efficient, and again, it's one that's used by other cities in the state. So with that, we're moving to, we recommend that the council approve General Ordinance 20-1383, an ordinance amending home inspection requirements of the general ordinance that you passed in September, and that was number 1377, amending Chapter 8.02 of the short-term rental program in the Dallas Municipal Code. We're asking that you move that by title only.
Okay, any questions or comments by the city council? Council Runyon.
Just want to say that anytime government can cross out 2 paragraphs in a regulation, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Anybody like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, would anyone on the council like to have the ordinance read in full?
No.
No.
I'm getting unanimous rejection of that idea.
Very well.
Okay.
Did you want me
So
to read the
we're looking for a
title?
motion. I'm sorry?
Did you want the city clerk to read it by title only?
Yes, please.
General Ordinance number 20-1383, an ordinance amending home inspection requirements of General Ordinance number 20-1377, Chapter 8.02, short-term rentals of the Dallas Municipal Code.
Is there a motion to approve by title?
General Ordinance number 20-1383, an ordinance amending home inspection requirements of General Ordinance number 20-1377, Chapter 8.02, short-term rentals of the Dallas Municipal Code by title only.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Council Randall and seconded by Council Runyon to approve the ordinance by title only. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 14 is adjournment. Is there, before we adjourn, is there any other business to come before the city council? Hearing and seeing nothing, I hereby adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very much for attending.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
everybody.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, everyone. Happy holidays.